welcome to the Fantasy Wildcard. I'll be your host, Ali. You can follow me on Twitter at FF Dynasty Grill. And with me, as always, my amazing co-hosts. We'll start with you, Matt, who you can follow at Matt FF Dynasty. How you doing, Matt?
Yeah, I'm doing very good, Ali. I'll just start by saying it's nice to have you back, mate. We missed having you on last week, but I know you were doing some exciting stuff, bringing bowls home, I hope, because I know you had a big bowls game, and then obviously the golf as well that you went to watch. I've been very envious of you, mate, these last week or so.
Yeah, it's been a exciting time, apart from someone writing my car off. But apart from that, it's been really good couple of weeks. I'll also bring in my other amazing co-host.
Get in!
You can follow at Dynasty_GOAT. How are you doing, Kev?
Yeah, very good, thanks, Ali. I'm extremely warm today, but other than that, yeah, just looking forward to talking some sleepers, and I'm in a new location, as you can see. So yeah, you'll be able to check me out, hopefully a little bit better than the last few previous shows.
We hope so, mate. Fingers crossed.
So just before we start today's show, I just want to take a moment of silence for all the Cam Akers owners out there in Dynasty. We want you to come back healthy, Cam. It's absolutely brutal news today. I don't know if you two want to add anything onto that.
Just, it's sad, isn't it? I mean, obviously, everyone's been getting excited about Cam Akers. He's obviously, we're in a great situation leading into the 2021 season. So it's always tough for something like this to happen. But like I said, we're just hoping he has a speedy recovery. It's obviously a tough injury to come back from. So hopefully he can, and he can have that season that we were hoping he was going to have this year. Hopefully he can do it next year.
Yeah, I think just don't overreact and make a quick trade straight away, and just take it in a little bit. And there's not a lot that's going to change really before the season. No matter who they're bringing, it's not really going to affect Cam Akers. The only thing that will affect him is if somebody like Darrell Henderson has a smashing season, or if they do something stupid and trade for a running back.
Absolutely. One of them veterans on the free agent market, I can see arriving later on in the season. Someone like an Adrian Peterson could be quite funny.
Todd Gurley is coming back. He's doing it. Everything I hoped last year, he's going to do it this year.
It's written in the stars, isn't it?
From the dead.
So going back to today's show, we're going to be talking about Dynasty Sleepers for the 2021 season. And no, we can't choose Darrell Henderson now. So basically, guys that we think are currently being undervalued that you can grab later on in your drafts or on the cheap that's going to outperform their current value. So we'll start with you, Kev, and the quarterback position. Who's your first guy that you think's currently being slept on in Dynasty?
Yeah, this is a guy I've spoke about before. I think anyone that knows me knows that I've got a bit of a soft spot for this guy. And the reason I've gone for this guy, I've attacked it in the question in the sense that the value will rise once he inevitably becomes a starter. So I've gone for Teddy Bridgewater of the Denver Broncos. He's currently the QB 38, which is a QB 4 in your startups. He was acquired by the Broncos for a 6th round pick, but I think this is a significant move for a couple of reasons. First of all, George Patton, who's the new GM for the Broncos, he was in that Vikings draft room when they took Teddy Bridgewater in the first round in 2014. I think as well, the trade for Bridgewater, it was just before the draft, so they kind of put the chips all in on Teddy Bridgewater. They had the option of taking guys like Fields and Jones at pick 9, but they chose not to do that, which I thought was pretty surprising, but it did show a lot of confidence in that. I think at the start of the season, it's probably 50-50 that as a starter between him and Drew Lock, but I think the first opportunity is to bench Drew Lock. I think it happens. Looking back to a similar situation with Mitch Trubisky last year, it seemed like we were just looking for an excuse to insert Teddy into the lineup. Insert Nick Foles into the lineup, sorry. So I think it'll be similar this year. I think the Broncos, they're a playoff contender, so I think the fact that they're going to be picking low in the draft at the end of round 1, it's going to put them out of range for a top QB. So there's actually potential that Teddy actually lasts as a starter a little bit longer. I don't think he's going to be higher than a QB2 when he hits your lineup, but as a QB4, he's more of a short-term sleeper where you can buy him now and then sell him when he becomes a starter.
Yeah, I mean, he's coming off his best fantasy season into finish as the QB19, as you mentioned, joining the Broncos, who we know they've got plenty of solid pass catching weapons. Noah Fant, Jerry Jeudy, and Colton Sutton coming back as well. So, yeah, there's every chance he can succeed with those weapons. He's obviously going to enter the preseason in a bit of a quarterback battle with Drew Lock. And personally, I honestly think that Drew Lock's going to be the starter week one. Admittedly, it's going to definitely be on a short leash because obviously he disappointed last year as well. But I do believe that Lock is going to be the starter. If Teddy does get his chance, then I think he's got to take full advantage of it. You've mentioned he's a free agent in 2022, so he's really got to make an impact quite quickly when he does see the field. But I also think it is quite limited in regards to the upside. I think it can maybe be a safe and solid QB2 in Superflex leagues, but I think that's about the limit you're ever going to get out of Teddy Bridgewater. But yeah, like you mentioned, I think he's somebody that if he does get on the field, you've got to take advantage and try and sell him where you can. Obviously, it's easy to say sell him when he does start. It's always hard to find that buyer, but yeah, he's somebody that I'm definitely looking to sell if I can, if he does become the starter.
Yeah, just going to echo the sentiments, really. I think we all think that Teddy Bridgewater is a better quarterback than Drew Lock. And I genuinely think if they did start with Teddy Bridgewater, that he could lead them to the playoffs. I think they've got a really solid roster. They're just that quarterback away from really challenging for a Super Bowl run. But the Broncos, they have this belief in Drew Lock, I think is rather misguided from what I've seen. And as long as there's no crazy move for Rodgers or Watson, I can see Teddy Bridgewater starting at some point in the season. And as you said, Matt, that would be 100% where I'm looking to sell Teddy. He's only on the 1 year deal. And I think he's good enough to stick around the league, but probably more as a backup role rather than a starter anywhere. So Denver, do the right thing and give us some Teddy B this year. So just a quick question back to you, Kev. With Teddy Bridgewater having his best fantasy season last year as the quarterback 19, do you think he can build on that with this receiver core if he gets the opportunity?
Yeah, I think he's going to smash, to be honest, when he's in the lineup. I think the weapons are as good, if not better, with the Broncos and the Panthers. I mean, the only guy you can probably argue is CMC. I think it's close to Sutton and DJ Moore. Honestly, I think Colton Sutton's bound to break out massively. I think he's going to be a wide receiver one in Dynasty as early as next year. So really big on him. But yeah, I think Teddy Bridgewater, he's not going to give you tons of upside, but he's someone that can enter your lineup, immediately gain value, and then you can trade him on in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're all pretty much in agreement with Teddy B. Yeah. So we'll move on to our second quarterback. Matt, who have you got?
Yeah, I've gone for Carson Wentz with this one. He's currently going as the quarterback 24 in Dynasty Startups. Obviously coming off that really disappointing 2020 season where he finishes the QB 22. But he now leaves the Eagles. He's reuniting with his former offensive coordinator, Frank Reich. So we know that he had plenty of success with him in 2017 when Wentz obviously the quarterback with the Eagles. And that's when he had that MVP candidate season before the ACL tear. Never really lived up to that ever since then, but he's getting that fresh start now in 2021 with the Colts. He's going to be behind one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. Obviously, we know the Eagles, they had the struggles last year with the O-line, and that led to Wentz being sacked 50 times last year. So he's obviously going to be in a much better situation now where he's got more time on the ball to pick his passes. Also, the weapons as well, I think, with the Colts, he's got T.Y. Hilton, Paris Campbell and Pittman. So I'd argue they're definitely an upgrade over what the Eagles had last year. He was dealing with guys like Greg Ward and Travis Fulgham in 2020. So it's a definite upgrade in the weapons as well. Even if you're not the biggest fan of the Colts weapons, that you've got to admit that they're a lot better than the situation that he had last year. And on the whole, I think the situation, it just looks better in 2021. He's still only 28 years old as well. So for a quarterback, that's plenty of years for him to produce in fantasy. I'm more than happy to grab him as a QB 24, and I think he can be a really solid QB 2 with potential upside.
To start off, I think Wentz is a lucky boy for for how terrible he was last season to land in such an amazing situation in Indianapolis. I think he's rather lucky. But then again, as Frank Reich, his old coach, he's going to try and bring him back to the MVP caliber level he was playing at in 2017. So you add in the fact that Indy are already a playoff team. And I think Wentz has got more upside than what Philip Rivers has at his age. So it could be a smart move to get them closer to the Super Bowl. You've got a good defense there. The O-line's really good. And the weapons are fine. It's definitely an upgrade from where he was at in Philly. And then at the quarterback 28, I'm definitely willing to take a shot on Wentz. The fact that you can grab him as sort of your quarterback 2-3, you can stack him with someone like Mahomes. If you take a real elite quarterback early, I'm happy to wait as long as I can and then grab Wentz as a back-end quarterback 2. I think that's solid. He's not one of them players that I wouldn't be surprised if he finished as a QB1. But also, equally, I wouldn't be surprised if he finished as a back-end quarterback 2 and he's had another season where he struggled. But he's definitely got enough upside. So I think he's a real ideal target this off-season. I can definitely see him being more expensive this time next season.
Yeah, he's a really interesting guy as Wentz. I mean, as a Philly fan, I did see him and the team fall apart last year. It was a horrible situation. It was so hard to succeed that nobody was going to really make it there. The O-line, the play calling, the weapons, it was all trash, to be honest. But he has proven to be fantasy viable in the right spot. He's twice been a QB1 before, including a QB5 in 2017 on 13 games. And like you said, Ali, the Colts, it's an ideal fit with his former OC, Frank Reich. I think the O-line is more important than the weapons to Wentz. I think protecting him is the main thing. Just about up, Jeffrey, Aguilar, Torrey Smith, not exactly the murderers of wide receivers. But yeah, the Colts have lost Anthony Costanzo, but actually probably got an upgrade in Eric Fisher. So they've got one of the best O-lines in football. The weapons have potential in time. Spoiler alert, we might be discussing a few of those in a bit. But I've got that concern that Wentz is a broken man now after such a terrible season and after sort of moaning to get his way out of Philly. A lot of bad vibes coming off him after the Hurts drafting. So I love this pick as a potential sleeper. Plus, you've got the fact that the FC South defenses, well, the poo out of them, really. It's such a bad defense. So just want to know your thoughts, Matt, on what you would consider a successful 2021 season for Wentz from a fantasy point of view.
Yeah, I think if he's a high-end QB2, I think you've got to be happy with that. So that's something pretty similar to what I had in 2019, where he was the quarterback 12. So if he's somewhere just a little bit below that, I think that's definitely a successful season for him. And I think, as we've just mentioned, I think it's well within his reach in this offense. I mean, if Philip Rivers can be the QB 17, then I fancy Wentz to get a few spots higher than that. But yeah, a high-end QB 2, I think I'd be more than happy with. And who knows? Like Ali said, maybe he can sneak into that bottom of the QB 1 range.
Certainly wouldn't be surprised. So we're in agreement again. So that's a good start. We'll move on to my quarterbacks. A bit worrying.
No pressure.
I'm choosing Sam Darnold, who's currently going as the quarterback 27. Now, Sam Darnold for me is the definition of a sleeper this offseason. I don't think he was given a fair crack at it in New York. That's just my opinion. So I don't think we're seeing his true potential. I'm also not going to predict that he has a breakout year, but the price for me is just enticing. The quarterback 27, I think it's just slightly too low. I also think it's quite exciting times in Carolina under Matt Jarrell and Joe Brady. I think they've got a young and talented team. I think we saw glimpses of it in 2020. So you've still got DJ Moore there, Robbie Anderson, who I'm both really high on, and obviously Christian McCaffrey coming back. That's going to be huge for Darnold. I was surprised by the aggressiveness that the Panthers shown to get the guy in Darnold. They also just picked up the 5th-year option for 2022, so there's some security there. They're also happy now to pay $7 million in the trade away of Teddy B to the Broncos. So it shows that they're all in on Darnold this year and probably next year as well. And then the fact that they passed up on Justin Fields in the draft, which we were all quite surprised on. Again, it just shows confidence in Darnold moving forward. So if you've managed to get him as your quarterback 3 in a startup, I think that's absolutely perfect because I think he's got plenty of upside.
It might have just gone off. Can you hear me?
We can hear
We can
you.
hear you. Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, I mean, with Darnold, he definitely fits the profile sleeper, doesn't he? It's fair to say we don't know who he is yet. He's suffered for years playing under Adam Gase, played on some woeful Jets offenses. However, he's not shown a ton of improvement for me over the years. Granted, the bad situation. It's extremely rare that QB busts, get 3 years, and then continue to be a starter. So I think it's encouraging the Panthers traded for him. It was a shock to me that they exercised his 5th-year contract pre-draft, an $18.8 million deal for 2022. So it was just really strange timing. It made more sense to see he was there at pick 8 in the draft, and it's similar to the Broncos in the fact that I think they've made the wrong decision, but it's great for guys like Darnold and Teddy Bridgewater. But there is definite upside as well. He's only 24. He's got that early round 1 pedigree. I just wonder, is it that poor Jets situation that made him a poor QB? Is that a true reflection, or will he continue to struggle and see ghosts? So do we think he'll move to the Panthers and become his very own Ghostbuster?
Another terrible joke back, Kev. Yeah, I do really like the talent and the potential. Sadly, we've yet to really see the potential, but it's been a bad situation that he was on with the Jets. It's a completely different story now, moving to Carolina. He joins the exciting coaches, like you mentioned, Ali and Matt Rule and Joe Brady. Teddy Bridgewater managed to be a QB2 in 2020. I just think these weapons that Darnold's going to have, I think they're all just going to elevate him. The only thing he's got to do really is get the ball out of his hands and get it to players like McCaffrey, DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson and just let them do all the work, really. They're going to get him the fantasy points by themselves. As I say, that he's just got to get the ball to him. So, yeah, I like the potential and at a cost of only QB 27, I think it's a great selection. You could probably get him as your QB3 in startup, so it's worth the shot, and who knows, maybe it can become your quarterback too. The question I was going to ask you, Ali, is what do you think Darnold's ceiling can be in fantasy in this new offense? His highest finish previous is QB 25.
QB 24. No, I think that if Teddy Bridgewater can finish as a QB, the QB 19, and he threw just 15 touchdowns, then I think Darnold can probably be a mid quarterback 2 as a ceiling. So sort of quarterback 16 to 20 range, I think is probably going to be his ceiling. Certainly having Christian McCaffrey back, I think that elevates Darnold. So he's averaged 5 passing touchdowns and 850 receiving yards the last 3 seasons. So I think either way, he's going to outproduce his cost of the quarterback 27.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So we're gonna
good pick, Ali. That's 3 out of 3.
Get in.
Love it.
Let's see if we can disagree with the running back. So
this is where it gets trickier.
We'll move on to you, Kev. Who's your running back?
Yeah, I actually found running back really hard position to pick for a dynasty sleeper, just because we sort of have a good handle on who the best ones are, and I just found it really tricky, to be honest. I know JJ Zachariason, he does sort of a yearly article on redraft sleepers and breakouts, and he talks about ambiguous backfields that aren't handcuffs and the pass catch. So the guy I've picked it's someone that actually only meets one of those things, but never mind. Darrington Evans, I think he's a clear handcuff behind workhorse Derrick Henry. But I guess in Dynasty, I'm confident on the top 22, and then after that, it's kind of a bit of a guessing game, I think. A big season might not mean a huge increase in your value. Thinking Nyheim Hines, JD McKissick, they had big seasons last year and they've not actually gone up. But I think taking Evans at RB 62, it gives plenty of room for him to grow, even if he's just the RB 45 or something next season. That's a massive increase on his value. So I did really like him as a prospect coming out. He was at Appalachian State, a small school. Frilly got 3rd round draft capital, but then the rookie season was marred by various injuries. I see him as a breather back, so someone that can split the load and also add a bit of pass catching. The Titans did add Brian Hill, but I'm not too worried about him. He couldn't break an Atlanta lineup with Todd Gurley on one leg. And then just thinking about Derrick Henry, monster workhorse last 2 years. He's had 782 carries, including the playoffs, which it's worrying that I think he's due an injury, but I think the flip side is he only plays 66% of snaps, so there is plenty of snaps there for other people to contend, and I think pass catching snaps is where Evans is going to really stand out. I think just going back to the injury concerns to Henry, a 28-year-old that weighs 250 pounds. I don't know what the track record is on that. We've not seen too many of those guys, maybe Brandon Jacobs, but I think either way, whether it be an injury or just that getting the pass game work, I think there's a chance that Evans cracks the top 40 next year.
Yeah, I'm like yourself, Kev. I really liked Evans as a prospect last off-season. He's a running back that can play both as a runner and a receiver. So, yeah, I was definitely intrigued by him. Sadly, the landing spot, it wasn't great, obviously, landing behind the wrecking ball in Derrick Henry. But as you mentioned, hopefully now he can just establish himself as that pass catching weapon in 2021. It's unlikely, I think, that he's going to take too many carries away from Henry because we just know how dominant Henry is. But there is a new coaching staff in Tennessee, so there's maybe potential for more involvement in the passing game for some of these running backs. His role, it's unlikely to be a huge one, but there's definitely potential there, as you just mentioned. If anything were to happen to Derrick Henry, then the potential upside that he could have is massive. So yeah, I think he's well worth a dart throw at a price that's basically next to nothing. So yeah, I think it's a solid sleeper.
Yeah, agreement here. I must admit I wasn't massively high on Evans coming out, but at the RB62 it is basically a free swing, so I can see the upside. So that's just a bonus. He's currently going between Javian Hawkins and Justin Jackson. I'm not very high on those two guys, so I definitely would pick Evans above those two. I certainly think it's a bit too low because he did get the third round draft capital, which is good. But he's behind that powerhouse that is Derrick Henry, who seems to be on Tom Brady's diet and he's defying father time. But that time's got to come to an end. Statistically, 28-year-olds don't do what Derrick Henry does. So can Evans be an opportunity to pick? Can he be in place to pick up that opportunity when it comes? So that is the question. Certainly injuries didn't help him last season, so he's still somewhat of an unknown quantity. I'm not a big Brian Hill fan, so I've got no worries there about Evans. It's just the passing work. Evans needs that passing work to be relevant. But as you mentioned, there's new coaching, so maybe Evans can carve out a role. And at RB62, I'm definitely willing to take a shot later on in the draft. So it's a good pick from me. So a quick question back to you, Kev. Is Evans strictly going to be a handcuff for you, or do you think he's worth a stash for when Henry retires or moves on?
Personally, I think he's a handcuff for now. I think I wouldn't be comfortable sticking him in my lineup without a Henry injury. I think he could work into a role next season where he can potentially become a handcuff and be part of a committee, a little bit like Chase Edmonds as a best case scenario where he's going to be the passing guy in a two-headed backfield. But yeah, I think for now he's more of a stash and hoping that Henry either retires or if something bad happened to him like a Cam Akers.
Yeah, I think we're all on board with that. So with that, we'll move on to your running back, Matt. Who have you got?
Yeah, I'll just echo what Kev said at the start. It's so hard to pick out these running backs as sleepers, but I've gone for Tariq Cohen. He's currently the RB54 in startup ADP. I'm just going to start by saying this is more of a selection for PPR leagues. If you're not in PPR leagues, it's probably not somebody that I'm looking to grab. But yeah, in PPR leagues, he's definitely somebody I'm targeting. He's coming off, obviously, a lost season after the ACL tear in 2020. But his value has now dropped to a point where it's become a really appealing selection later on in your drafts. It was the RB40 last off season, so his value's definitely seen a drop. And I still really like the situation that he's in. I mean, yeah, Montgomery obviously had that really solid season last year and is proven himself as a capable pass catcher. But I just think Cohen offers that something different that Montgomery doesn't. Is explosive, and you don't really see that from somebody like Montgomery. I just like the skill set basically that Cohen has. I think beyond as well, Allen Robinson and Mooney, the Bears don't really have that many pass catching weapons, so I think there's potential that he can see a role behind those guys. The Bears, they ranked 9th in pass attempts in 2020, so we know there's a good amount of volume to go around, and obviously the upgrade at quarterback as well is massive, going to Justin Fields, and I'm just hoping he starts sooner rather than later. But yeah, at first glance, I'll admit his stats aren't that great, but I think it all just boils down to the targets that he gets, and that's what makes him appealing in PPR leagues. His previous finishes, he was the RB29 his rookie season, then RB12, and then RB27 before last year. So just speaking from PPR, I think they're really solid finishers, low end RB2s. But yeah, if you can get him as RB54 and he can put up those kind of bottom end numbers, I think it's a no-brainer for me, really, to grab him at that ADP.
Yeah, no, I agree here. And I'd only be touching him in PPR leagues as well. Okay. I think Cohen's been there and done it, so we know what he is at this point. He's his dynamic catch and back. The situation for it doesn't excite me too much in Chicago, but the price does. RB54, that's in the same park as Chuba Hubbard, Philip Lindsay and Sony Michel, and we don't know what their roles are going to be this year. So I'll take the guy that we've seen in action, and it's almost a free swing. So I'm happy to take it if he was to drop it to this ADP. As you said, Matt, I think his opportunity lies in the lack of receiving options. So you've got Allen Robinson, who's the alpha guy there, but then you've got Darnell Mooney, who seems to be emerging, but can he be that dominant wide receiver too? We don't know. So there's no real wide receiver free. So can he be an effective passing option? He could be. They've also got Damian Williams there now. We've not seen him since 2019 season. He was pretty good, especially in that Super Bowl, but then he is 29 years old now. So what sort of role will he have? Main concern is just health for Cohen. Obviously, Montgomery's carved out his role, so he's probably going to be the main guy. So for me, it would have to be he'd have to reach his ADP of RB54 for me to bite. But I can certainly see it paying off if he was to get 70 targets, which he has done in each season where he finishes RB29, 12, and 27. He got 70 plus targets. So if he got close to 70 targets, then for me, he's definitely going to outperform his ADP.
Yeah, I think he's a value at RB54. He's worth the punt there. He's a proven fantasy asset. He's a low cost to get. I think as well, Justin Fields, night and day versus guys like Trubisky, Foles, and even Dalton predicting the future if he ever gets a game. But I did actually take Cohen in my most recent startup, but I still have concerns about the injury. There's been a lot of talk that he's walking stiff in training camp. Pre-injury, I think explosion was his biggest asset when I think of Tariq Cohen. So I think the ACL injury is gonna be a real test, and I think it'll be good yards to catch you with the ACL injury for Cam Akers potentially as well. That could give you a little bit of insight if they've got similar injuries, to see if Tariq Cohen comes back flying. Then it's going to give you some positivity for Akers. Like Ali mentioned as well, added Damian Williams. I think last game he played was the Super Bowl 54, where he had over 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. So back then he was decent. He's 29 now. He's had a year off. Will he be any good? I'm not sure, but it's another question for Cohen, I think, as well. Montgomery went from 25 to 54 catches without Cohen there. I think it's sensible to project 40 for Montgomery, but I think gone are the days where Cohen's going to get 90 targets. But like Ali said, 70 targets would be more than enough to smash running back 54. So I just want to get your thoughts on the emergence of David Montgomery, Matt. What do you see as Cohen's ceiling moving forward now that Montgomery's sort of emerged and broke out as such?
Yeah, I think you've got to start by admitting that the ceiling's definitely been capped with Montgomery. But as I mentioned, I just think with the skill set that he has, I think he offers that little bit different, something a little bit different to this offense. I think he could see, as you just mentioned, 70 plus targets, maybe even up to 80 targets, especially if Anthony Miller, if he doesn't take that step forward, obviously he's been a bit of a disappointment. So maybe Cohen could see a few snaps in the slot as well. I think his ceiling can be a high RB3, maybe even pushing to a low RB2. But again, that's in PPR leagues, and I just believe in the targets. I think there's enough targets to go around, and as we mentioned, with the lack of pass catching weapons that they have behind the top 2 guys, I just think there's going to be that volume there, and for somebody like Cohen, that's that's basically his bread and butter, and I think that's what he can excel at. I'm fully agreeing that it's obviously a big injury that he's coming off, but we're starting to see now in more recent times that ACL injuries that they're not what they used to be. They're not the kind of death sentence that they used to be for these running backs. We've seen running backs come back and manage to put up good fantasy numbers after these kind of injuries. But yeah, I just think with that ADP of RB54, I think there's not many running backs in that range that are going to have the kind of opportunity that Cohen's going to have. The more, as we've mentioned, the more like the handcuff running backs around there. So yeah, I just like Cohen for the chance that he's got that opportunity, and we're not relying on something else for him to see an uptick in value. I think he can do that with the opportunity that he has.
Yeah, completely agree. Another good pick. RB54 is just, it's a bit too low. So I'm going to move on to a rookie, and I'm reaching really low now. Going to bring our viewers a proper diamond in the rough. So I'm selecting Elijah Mitchell, running back 70. He's currently going as, and I'm a bit shocked that he's still at running back 70. His ADPs, I think, is far too low. That's behind guys like Puka Williams and Jared Doak. So take that as you wish. I'm just going to take a shot on a guy with really good size, good speed, and in the most running back productive offense in football. Also, the fact that there's not an alpha running back, it helps. It's very much a committee in San Francisco. It's messy, but if you can choose the right guy on any given week, it can end up winning you that week. And we've also seen that draft capital really doesn't matter in Shanahan's offense. You only got to look at Raheem Mostert, Wilson, Hasty. They're all undrafted. Then you've got Gorman. He's only a 4th round pick. So Mitchell, with his 6th round draft capital, I think he's generally got an opportunity to carve out a role. Obviously, they selected Trey Sermon in the 3rd round, 88th overall. But he's already been crowned the guy. So you're having to take him as the RB26, which I think is far too high. And he's also an unknown quantity. We've not seen him much like Mitchell. So just give me Mitchell at much less cost. RB70 to the RB26. I'll take Mitchell all day long.
This is spicy, this girl. I love this one. Big fan of Mitchell, my most owned rookie running back. I mentioned JJ Zachary Reason's article that he does, but he actually fits the perfect context for that, with being an ambiguous backfield and pass catching, etc. So, like you said, the 49ers, they always give opportunity if you're ready. Guys like Jeff Wilson, Mostert, Matt Breida. I'm not shocked if he outproduces Sermon as a rookie. I think Mitchell's a McKinnon clone. I think he's great in the pass game. He's a gem for this scheme and offense, but I'm never comfy starting a 49ers running back, but I think Mitchell is someone that can definitely see a value rise through this season, which makes him a cracking sleeper selection.
Yeah, I agree. We know the value that this backfield can present in fantasy football. It's going to be a messy backfield again in 2021. We just mentioned some of the guys there: Mostert, Sermon, Gorman, Hasty, and Wilson, who's obviously injured at the minute. But it's a really crowded backfield. You never really know which guy you want to start. But I do like the talent that Mitchell has. He's a speedy back, and we've seen success with these kind of running backs in this offense. You just mentioned Mostert. He's another speedy back that's had plenty of success in this backfield. So if he gets that opportunity, then yeah, I think he can definitely smash. He's one of the cheapest options as well in this offense. It's something that you always look to do. It's something you should always look to do in a tasty backfield that's crowded. Just go for the cheapest guy, and then if you do hit, you've paid basically peanuts for a nice return in fantasy. So yeah, if I'm taking a dart throw, he's definitely the guy that I'm targeting. He's probably going undrafted in most startups, so you can maybe even just pick him up off waivers after you start up. So to be able to do that and get somebody with the potential that he has, I think it's a great selection, and I'm just hoping he gets that chance in 2021. So Ali, what do you think is the possibility that Mitchell's is a reliable weekly starter at some point next year?
I certainly can't rule it out. Like Kev said, you find it difficult to start any one of these running backs. So I think we really need to wait and see how the first few weeks unfold. There's obviously a lot of traffic ahead of Mitchell, but with Wilson now out for a few weeks, then that certainly helps the situation. I think he's that cheap that you can pick him up so late. I picked him up as my final pick in my Scott Fish draft, so I'm quite happy about that. Or he's just going to be on waivers, as you said. So again, if he turns out to flop and doesn't have a role at all, then you can just drop him. This price is such a cheap price, but also you can see the upside. If he does carve out a role, then there's no way he's going to be RB70 this time next year.
Yeah, love it.
Cool.
Another
so we'll move.
Pick, Alec. I think we're doing pretty well, aren't we? Halfway through, and I don't think we've had a bad pick yet, have we? Pat Sims on the back.
We're smashing this.
I can't wait for them all to absolutely smash next year. I mean, this is gold we're giving the listeners.
It really is. So we'll move on to the wide receiver position, and I'd certainly love this pick as well. So Kev, who are you picking for your wide receiver sleeper?
Yeah, it's the forgotten man of 20. Got to partly thank Josh Larkin, Cody Carpentier for this one. They came on our stream-a-thon and they were raving about Paris Campbell. It got me. He's been hampered by injuries so far. He flashed in his one game last year, 14 fantasy points, 6 receptions and 9 yards on the ground. He's actually the same size as Brandon Ayuk, and I can see a similar usage where it's a lot of the short work where he's using the amazing yards after catch ability. And it actually, in college, it was a low yards per route guy, so that makes sense. I think the Colts are a wide open wide receiver core. You've got T.Y. Hilton, who's on a 1-year deal, and he's going to be age 32 season. You've got Michael Pittman, who you guys know that I'm not his biggest fan. But back to Paris Campbell, he's 24 years old. He's got 2 years left on his rookie deal. Wide receiver 67, it's all about upside, really. I think if he's healthy, he's going to perform really well. I think he's a top 45 pick next year, which that might not seem high, but when you've got guys like Curtis Samuel going around 40 this year, and he was a top 25 wide receiver last season, if he's a top 45 guy and he's jumped 22 spots, I'd class that as a sleeper.
Yeah, definitely. We mentioned it a little bit last week on last week's show with Jack that he's probably the main guy that I want out of these wide receivers. I was hoping he could have that breakout year last season, and it really did look promising after his week 1 performance. He had 6 receptions for 71 yards, but then obviously missed the remainder of the season due to injury. So I'm just really hoping he can bounce back in 2021. The Colts, they clearly like him. They spent that 2nd round pick to get him in the NFL draft, and as I mentioned earlier, I think Wentz is a nice upgrade at quarterback for the Colts. I think Campbell's going to get plenty of targets in the slot. He's an absolute value at wide receiver 67. I mean, I'm honestly, I'm a bit shocked that he's that low, in all honesty. I think he can be a really solid flex play if he remains healthy in 2021. That is obviously a big if. That's the big concern with Campbell. It's the injuries. He's missed time in both of the seasons that he's been in the NFL. But yeah, if he does stay healthy, I do believe he can be the number 1 pass catcher in this offense. So yeah, he's definitely a sleeper and somebody I think that can gain loads of value next year.
Yeah, definitely. His ADP very much says that he's been forgotten about by dynasty players. I pretty much see Paris Campbell and Michael Pittman very much neck and neck in production going into next year. So the fact that there's 19 wide receivers being taken between them, I can't quite get my head around that one. Paris Campbell's got the draft capital, and he's very much got the ability. We've seen how much of a speedster he is. We've got the 1 game sample from last season where he had 9 targets. So it just shows they want to get him the ball. It's just them injuries. He's really only played 6 games in his career when you break it down over the 2 seasons. And the fact he's had 5 different injuries, so he's nearly had more injuries than he has matches. But Frank Reich's come out recently and said how excited he is about Paris Campbell and how much he's going to use him this year, and he's now healthy. So at the wide receiver 67, I'm taking him in every draft that I'm having. I absolutely love Paris Campbell, so this is probably my favourite pick of the whole show. So well done, Kev. So question back to you. What sort of price would you be prepared to pay to acquire Paris Campbell this offseason?
Well, I think it's an interesting time to be going out to buy players at this time. I don't tend to see a lot of trades get done this time of year. because I think people are trying to build the team or see how the team goes initially. I guess everyone's had the rookie draft, so looking at next year, I'm thinking I'd pay a second for him. You probably don't have to in all leagues. There is the worry that if you're paying a second and you have a bad season, that might be the 201, but I think you just got to back yourself really at this stage of the off season and go for a second and not assume it's going to be a low pick or a high pick. Just go down the middle. I'd pick second.
Yeah. I agree.
It's clearly a guy that we all like. So I've just quickly had a look at where we've got him in his rankings. Ali, you've got him 54. Kev's got him 50. I've got him 49. So to be ranked as wide receiver 67, is it? It's crazy. I mean, I think a lot of people are going to start to realise that it's just insane value, isn't it, really, for a wide receiver that's got the upside that Campbell's got.
Yeah. And talking of insane value, we're going to move on to your pick, Matt. Someone that we all really love. Who are you choosing?
Yeah, I'm laughing because it's not the deepest of sleepers. I know we've been, Ali, you especially been going for the deep ones, but I've gone for Laviska Shenault just because he's wide receiver 36 currently in the ADP. But I'm absolutely falling in love with him, and I mean, he's an absolute smash at that ADP. He showed flashes like last year in his rookie season. He ended up finishing with 58 receptions for 600 yards and 5 touchdowns. But you just got to remember the quarterbacks that he played with: Gardner Minshew, Mike Glennon, and Jake Luton, and now he's going to one of the most successful college quarterbacks that we've ever seen throwing in the ball. So the upgrade that he's got at quarterback, it's unbelievable. But then it's not just that; it's the fact that the Jags, they ranked 6th in pass attempts last year. So he's not just getting that upgrade in the quality, but he's getting plenty of targets as well. I'm not concerned by Kev's wide receiver 1, DJ Chark. I know Kev loves DJ Chark, but I think that Shenault's going to be that lead guy in the offense. And all jokes aside, I think all three of us think he's the guy to own on this offense. People are also going to forget just what an exciting prospect he was as well when he was coming into the NFL. He could have been right up there with the guys like CeeDee Lamb and Judy in the NFL draft process. It was just the injury history and the concerns that he had in college that knocked him down. But talent-wise, he's right up there with those guys. And I honestly wouldn't be shocked if he's a top 20 wide receiver in 2021. I don't think that's a hot take, to be honest. That current ADP, though, the fact he's only 22 as well, he's a versatile wide receiver, can be used all over the field. I'm just grabbing him everywhere at that ADP. I think it's insane value.
Yeah, it's a smash run pick for me as well. I don't necessarily look at Shenault as a sleeper in the community. I think everyone's getting fairly excited about him, but at that price, he definitely is a sleeper. We're all big fans of Laviska, and we all think that he can outproduce Chark and be the number one on this team. He's my wide receiver 31, and I'm actually the lowest on Shenault out of the three of us. Just got to look at his stats from last year. I think they were bang average. But then again, you can forgive him because his quarterbacks may as well have been you, me, and Kev, to be honest. Yeah. As you say, it's his versatility that stands out. They could genuinely be building that offense around Shenault. I think that'd be a good idea. You've got Kev's guy, DJ Chark, in the final year of his contract. You've also got new addition Marvin Jones, and Marvin Jones always has his big games. But again, that's just a one-year deal. So Shenault should be the wide receiver 1. The fact he's only 22 years old and he's so talented. And then throw in the fact that they've got the generational quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. I can certainly see Shenault finishing as a back-end quarterback too. Wouldn't shock me. And obviously that would mean a much higher ADP this time next season. So the time to get him is definitely now.
Yeah, big fan of Shenault. I was early on the Shenault over Chark train. That was towards the end of last season when people were still thinking DJ Chark was a thing. I'm actually lowest on Chark in rankings, Matt, cheeky boy.
I just like winding you up, Kev. I just like winding you up. I've got to start something after all the Sony Michelle jokes. I've got to try and find something.
No, you're absolutely fine. I know it's tongue in cheek, but yeah, back to Laviska. I just think what a guy. I'm the highest out of us three as a pure dynasty rank. I think I love his versatility. I love the upgrades in the offense. I love the talent that he's got. I'm not sure he does produce as the wide receiver 1 on the Jags this season. I think that's sneakily going to be Marvin Jones, who hooks back up with Darrell Bevel, who he's worked with before in Detroit. I'm really intrigued to see how the Jags look. One of my most intriguing sides, along with guys like the Broncos and the Bengals. So long term, I'm in on Shenault, no doubt. There's lots of other smart follows in the community that are also bored, including us three, pat on the back. And I think as well with Shenault, it's that style, that power, that splash playability that's going to get him hype. Probably even more hype if he has a big season than he deserves. I think there's definitely going to be an overreaction if he does hit, just because of how he looks and how he plays. So I just want to know, Matt, if he hits his ceiling, where would he sit in your second-year wide receiver rankings? So the guys that were taken from the 2020 class.
Yeah, I'll just start by saying that if there's an overreaction, I'm going to be leading that crowd of people overreacting because, I'll be getting super excited if he has a big season. But I honestly think he can be right up there with guys like Judy and Ayuk, who is going to be around my wide receiver 3 or 4 out of that 2020 class. Everything just seems to be falling in place for him, and the situation that he's got now is fantastic. It's going to be really exciting to see, and I just hope that he does play that, gets a full season, and he's able to show the talent that he's got. As I mentioned, as a prospect, I think there's no denying the talent that he had. It was just more down to the concerns with the injuries. He did struggle with a couple of injuries during the season, nothing that really held him out for too long. So I'm just hoping he can put in that full season, and if he does, the talent is definitely there. So yeah, I'll be overreacting, Kevin. He'll be jumping up around those guys like Judy and Ayuk.
No, 2 really good selections. So I've got a tough.
I kind of bottled it a bit there, didn't I? Really going for Shenault. It's not the deepest of sleepers, but I just had to talk about him. I think the value's there, so I think I class that as a sleeper.
It's fine. I can be the whipping boy this round. So I'm going to dig deep. I'm going to select the wide receiver 70, who is Mecole Hardman. So all aboard the hype train. Strap yourselves in. Because the Mecole Hardman hype train is about to leave the station. This one actually surprises myself, and I'm being dragged in a little bit. I was buying Mecole Hardman this time last year and ended up feeling really silly. But I think I've got a reason now to jump back in. And the biggest reason is just the ADP. So if you take last June's ADP, he was the wide receiver 46. He was clearly being overdrafted. Now he's 24 spots lower. And actually, I think he's in a better opportunity than he was this time last season. He's going to be fighting DeMarcus Robinson for that wide receiver 2 spot. The same guy that has been there for 5 seasons, and he's never had more than 45 receptions in a single season. His highest finish is wide receiver 68, and that's despite never missing a game to injury. So I do think Hardman's going to be the wide receiver 2, especially now that Sammy Watkins has gone. So not only is the opportunity there, but he's been selected 5.5 rounds later than he was this time last season. And then he's only 23 years old, so he's still really young. And I think this is a good buying opportunity. My dog certainly agrees to buy or draft Mecole Hardman. And the aim is to flip him in the season. If he has the opportunity's there, and if he has a big game, then I'll certainly be looking to flip him in the season. But I just think wide receiver 70 is crazy. He's going behind the likes of De'Ami Brown and Amari Rodgers. So, and remember, this is the best offense on football. So if he is the wide receiver 2, then he's definitely being drafted too low.
Yeah, when we were discussing this show and doing the selections beforehand, my reaction to this pick was, "Oh my goodness!" Yeah, exactly, Ray, exactly. I mean, Mecole Hardman is an absolute hype train merchant. I genuinely think he was drafted as Tyreek insurance. He's shown very little in his 2 seasons so far. I know he's had a couple of hundred yards in each season, but he's someone I've got 0 dynasty shares of. I actually took him in a redraft last year, which was quite hilarious. I dropped him by week 2. I do think the Chiefs wide receiver 2 position is fool's gold in the sense that after Tyreek, Kelce, and the growth of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I'm unsure how much will be left to sort of distribute. I know they do tend to dilute the volume to several guys, whether it be Marcus Robinson or Byron Pringle or Hardman as well. He does get his bits now and then, but I just can't see that consistency to where he's value will increase a ton. I think the only format I consider is best ball, but even then, I'm not super excited.
Yeah. Here we are again, the annual Mecole Hardman high part of the off season. But now, all jokes aside, I can understand why. I mean, as you mentioned, he's on the best offense in the NFL. Watkins has moved on, so there's an opening to be the wide receiver 2 in this offense. But like we've mentioned, Hardman's is shown flashes without really ever taking off. Back-to-back 500-yard seasons. We do know that Harmony was quite a raw prospect when he was coming out, so you can maybe make excuses for the slow start that he's had. And then, the ADP wide receiver 70, I mean, it's got to be worth a shot purely on the fact that he's on such a high-powered offense. But my only question and concern, Ali, would be, do you actually think he's going to be the wide receiver 2 on this offense? I mean, he was outsnapped by Demarcus Robinson last year in 2020. Do you truly believe he is going to step in and be that wide receiver 2?
Well, I think he has a chance, and I wouldn't be taking the chance at wide receiver 46 like he was last year, but I think at wide receiver 70, I'm willing to take that chance. He was outsnapped by Robinson, but he still saw more targets. And then I don't see too much of a risk in a guy taken in the 15th round with the upside that he can bring. As Kev mentioned, he's certainly a best ball dream player, but I still think in Dynasty he has real upside just because of his age and the fact he's on that offense. But again, he's not a player that I want to hold on to long term. The aim would be to flip him if the hype train continues to grow or he has a big game.
Yeah. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised to see his ADP starting to creep up the closer we get to the season. I think people are, like you said, they're going to be getting excited about getting a piece of this offense. And it wouldn't shock me to see his ADP creep up. Hopefully not to the levels it was last year, but
No.
Yeah, wide receiver 70 though. I think that's it's got to be worth it. It's got to be worth a shot.
Wait till you see a video come out in training camp with Mahomes lobbing a bomb to
exactly.
Mecole Hardman.
A 100-yard bomb from one end zone to the other, and everyone will go crazy.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So we'll move on to the tight end position, and Kev, you're back up. Who's your selection?
Yeah, I'm going for Adam Troutman at tight end 17. I mean, I'm really ramping up my love for the Trout. It's steady rise in ADP this offseason, and I actually think it needs to be considered around guys like Irv Smith and Robert Tonyan. He's cheaper than those guys at tight end 17, so he's a big value for me, and I think he can rise steadily as well. I think outside of Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara, it's a wide open team. Winston, he had OJ Howard on pace for an easy tight end one season before injury a few years back. And Winston is also known as a tight end lover in college. So this is it isn't a ball control offense anymore now that Drew Brees has gone. I think Winston's going to be slinging it around. I think as well the sneaky upside for touchdowns, getting maybe 8 to 10. I know Michael Thomas, he's never hit 10. Jared Cook, he got 7 and 9 over the last 2 seasons. So Troutman, 24 years old, I think solid volumes incoming. So I guess my advice is get in there now and catch the golden trout.
No, I love it. I hate to admit it, Kev, but I absolutely love this selection. This is probably my favourite one of the show. I'm a big believer in Troutman and him taking that step forward in 2021. He had a really solid rookie season behind Jared Cook. He caught 15 out of the 16 targets that he did have. He was the best pass blocking graded tight end in the entire NFL, which I'm sure you've heard about because everybody likes to talk about it on Twitter. But I know that doesn't get you fantasy points being a good blocker of the ball, but what it does do is it gives you those opportunities to be on the field, and with that's then giving you opportunities to catch the ball. So it's still great for fantasy in terms of just being able to be on the field more. There's no more Cook now, so Troutman is most likely going to be the tight end one on this offense. Kev just mentioned the lack of weapons behind Thomas and Kamara, so the opportunity is definitely there for him to see targets. Jameis Winston's the guy that we're hoping and praying is to start because he's going to be ideal for somebody like Troutman. We know the success that he's had with tight ends in the past, guys like Cameron Brate and OJ Howard with the Bucs. So yeah, I'm really excited for Troutman next year, and I think at tight end 17, I think that's a great value. And I think he can be in the top 12 tight ends quite easily.
Yeah, I also hate the fact that Kev has smashed this show. I also, I also really don't like the New Orleans Saints. The fact that they've bullied my team for so many years, but I do absolutely love. I love Adam Troutman. You've summed it up perfectly, Matt. He is really good at blocking, but that does keep you on the field, so that leads to opportunity. And now they're without their productive tight end, Jared Cook. Troutman steps into his shoes nicely. Cook had over 1,200 yards and 16 touchdowns in the last 2 seasons with the Saints, so that's quite exciting. And the fact that the Saints didn't address wide receiver in the draft until round 7, they don't have a stellar lineup of receiving options either. You've got Michael Thomas, who's the dominant receiver, but after that, it's really thin. So opportunity is what tight ends need in fantasy. So you've only got to look at Logan Thomas last season, the opportunity he had. So I can 100% see Troutman breaking out this season. So just a quick question back to you, Kev. We talk about the tight end wasteland for tight ends sort of after tight end 8 onwards. Do you think Troutman has the ability and opportunity to jump into that bracket of the sort of top 8 or top 9?
Yeah, I think he's got a really good chance of being a tight end 1 this season, maybe a back end tight end 1 in that 10 to 12 range. You don't necessarily have to do a ton to get to be a tight end 1, so it's not as hard as it seems. You just need a little bit of luck to go your way, I guess. And I think if he is a back end tight end 1 this season, it's going to put him as a top 8 dynasty tight end next season in my eyes, because he'll be 25. Still in a decent offense with Thomas and Alvin Kamara. So, yeah, I can definitely see him making that jump next season based on a strong this season.
Yeah, all in agreement. There's certainly one tight end that we all really love, and we're going to move on to another one that we really love. So, Matt, who's your pick?
Yeah, I've gone for Blake Jarwin. He's currently the tight end 24 in startup ADP. This is me just purely taking a punt on getting a pass-catching weapon in this high-powered Dallas offense. He showed glimpses in 2019 with 4 or 5 really strong double-digit fantasy weeks. Sadly got hurt in 2020 when he had that opportunity to have a really solid season. Dalton Schultz then filled in and he finished as the tight end 11, so that just goes to show that the opportunity that was there for Jarwin if he stayed healthy. But Schultz is more known as the blocking tight end, so with Jarwin being that more true pass catching tight end, I think he now steps back into that role and being the fantasy relevant tight end out of the two. We do know he's obviously competing against guys like Cooper, Lamb and Gallup for the targets. They're 3 really talented wide receivers. But I just think with the amount of targets that are going to go around, I think there's plenty for him to be able to shine in this offense. Target and receptions, like you just mentioned with the last guy, they're what you look for in a fantasy tight end. They're what make you get those strong and really consistent fantasy tight ends. So yeah, just with that, I think Jarwin can definitely be that in 2021.
Well, you two have just chosen my 2 tight ends I took in the Scott Fish Bowl, so hopefully that's a good
nice
sign
little,
for 2021.
Nice little humble flex there, Alice, smashing it in the Scott Fish Bowl.
Yeah.
But then again, I was all in on Jarwin last season and injury wrecked his campaign. So we'll see. We also saw how productive Dalton Schultz was in 2020. He was the tight end 11. And I think Jarwin's got more pass catching ability than Schultz. So the signs are pretty good for Jarwin. The big question marks are his health, and that's related to the quarterback and the tight end. But if they can both stay healthy, then Jarwin could easily be a tight end 1. I think we all have taken Jarwin in startups as either a tight end 2. So if you're drafting a stud early, you can leave it really late and draft Jarwin as a tight end 2, or as part of a double or a triple hit late on in drafts. I think this offense is set to put up bonkers numbers in 2021, and I can see Jarwin seeing plenty of opportunities and targets, even with the 3 really good wide receivers on the field. If he has a bounce back campaign and stays healthy, his ADP is sure to be more like a high tight end 2 next season. So I think you've got to jump on him now. We're all team Jarwin in the wild card.
Indeed, there's a lot of love for Jarwin this offseason from us, and also our guests as well. We had Linda on that Jarwin was a wildcard selection as a player that's going to improve the value the most this season. So if that's a yardstick, I guess that's makes his pick very very good indeed, Matt. I mean, with Jarwin, I've took him in multiple leagues, probably too many, if I'm being honest. I think he's a great way, cheap exposure to an elite offense, like you mentioned. But it is more of a projection than what he's actually done previously, because he's entering his 5th season and he's had less than 80 catches in his career. It does make it murky as well with Dalton Schultz being around, who's a couple of years younger and was a top 12 tight end last season. But ultimately, I do think it's Jarwin's tight end room. But Schultz is a slight worry. I think the pass volume, it means that there'll be plenty there in Dallas. The fact that Schultz was a top 12 wide receiver, tight end last season with all those weapons and without Dak, it's really positive for Jarwin. But I just wonder how much Jarwin can achieve in this offense, how much he'll be capped. So just want to know, Matt, what's your thoughts on the several elite weapons? How much will it cap Jarwin's ceiling?
Yeah, I think again, there's no denying that it caps the ceiling. But Dallas, they averaged 40 passes per game in 2020. I mean, that should be enough to get Jarwin 5 or 6 targets at least on average, which is really solid numbers for a tight end. I mean, also, if one of these wide receivers were to go down in 2021, that's again just going to open even more opportunity. Again, makes him even more interesting when it comes to fantasy. He's likely a high tight end 2, low tight end 1, but I think the potential upside, if as I said, if the situation wants to change, if anything happens to one of these wide receivers, the amount of targets that he could see is going to be crazy numbers. And yeah, I just think if somebody like Logan Thomas can do it with that kind of opportunity, then Jarwin can definitely do it.
Oh dear, I'm going to have to follow this up with another good one, aren't I? You've had both picked a really good tight end that we like, so I'm going to open the well and I'm going to dig down.
He's really going deep again.
I'm going for the tight end 46, and it's Mo Ali Cox. So it's another Indianapolis Colts player, and this might be my favourite deep sleeper of this selection. Gigantor, as the fantasy footballers call him. The big man. I think he's generally got a case to be the lead back or the lead tight end this season. With Trey Burton now out of the picture, I think Mo Ali Cox is now competing alongside baby hands Jack Doyle for the starting job. And Mo Ali Cox, he had more targets and more receptions than Doyle last season, so that's a good sign. And we've also seen Carson Wentz utilize tight ends throughout his NFL career, so it's another good sign. And at tight end 46, it's just an absolute free swing. So he's probably on your waiver wire, to be in fact. He's currently been drafted behind Kyle Granson, who is a rookie from the same team, and also Tommy Tremble. So he's so cheap. Granson could become a thing, but I'll take the big man who doesn't cost a thing, and someone that I think the team believes in. The fact that they put a second round tender on him. I've seen him dominate a couple of games, so I'll take my shot on the tight end 46, Mo Ali Cox.
Yeah, I think based on this show, it's become very apparent that the Colts offense is one that's been slept upon, that's going to provide a lot of value. There is a couple of them thinking like, I know I bang on about them all the time. Everyone must think I'm a Denver fan, really, but like the Broncos are a similar team. But Mo Ali Cox, I think it's an interesting position. It looks like he's the starter. Look at the competition. Obviously, Burton left, like I said. Jack Doyle, he sounds like an Irish amateur boxer. Granson, I think, is going to be good long term, but not straight away. And don't forget with Mo Ali Cox, the Underworld boys that I mentioned earlier, they spoke about Mo Ali Cox on the Streamathon. So that's 2 plugs I've given now. Checks in the post. I think Mo Ali Cox, raw talent. He's got a basketball background. We know that's led to really good tight end success previously. I think the move from Rivers to Wentz is an interesting one, because obviously Rivers, it was like an RB magnet. I think moving to Wentz is going to be better for the wide receivers and the tight ends. Makes sense. We've picked out Paris Campbell and Mo Ali Cox, so we are legends, I think. The only concern for me with Mac, as I'm going to call him, is how high he does score. I like my tight end free to contribute. I really keep 4, but at his cost, he's not going as a tight end free, is he? I think he's better suited to 2 tight end leagues or very deep leagues. But yeah, I think he's going to be a tight end one for the Colts, and that's going to lead to his value rising. So, cracking shout on the Mac.
Yeah, now you know I love a tight end, so big respect, Ali, for going this deep on a tight end. Made a really strong start to the season, 181 yards and a touchdown in those first 3 weeks, but then he seemed to fade away a little bit in that rotation of tight ends with Jack Doyle and Trey Burton. But as you've mentioned, he's a big athletic guy. The commentators and announcers, they love to keep reminding us that he was a former standout college basketball player rather than a football player. So I guess you could say that he's still adjusting back to football. He's not played it since he was a freshman in high school. So yeah, that could maybe be why he's made such a slow start at the position. But either way, I think he's fallen into a really interesting situation in 2021. Is obviously getting Wentz, like we've mentioned, and as you mentioned, Ali, the success that he's had with tight ends, it obviously is something that you're drawn to when you're looking at Wentz and these weapons. So yeah, I can see why. You also mentioned the fact that the second round tender on him as well. It just shows that the team, that they obviously really like him and they want to keep other teams away from him. So yeah, I mean, if they like him, then I think we should like him. And yeah, I think he's a great late tight end dart throw. And yeah, I'm expecting big things from the Big Mac. But the question I was going to ask you is, I kind of use your little Mac there, and Ali saying the big man. I thought, yeah, the Big Mac. My question to you, Ali, is there any concerns that the Colts go after a more established tight end in free agency after all the roster cuts? I mean, Zach Ertz is a guy that comes to mind and has been mentioned a few times with the Colts. Does that concern you at all?
Yeah, I think there's always going to be a concern when someone like a big name like Ertz is on the trade block. I've been thinking for months that Ertz to Indianapolis just made sense, but it's not happened so far, and I'm not quite sure why. We've been hearing lately that he's close to move to Buffalo, but we'll see what happens. My hope is that they feel like they've got enough now in Doyle, Cox, and the rookie Granson. But then at this really low price, if it doesn't work out, you could just cut him. But I do certainly see enough reasons for optimism for Cox in this new look offense with Carson Wentz.
No, I agree.
So
that is a super late tight end you've gone for there, Ali, I've got to say. Very impressive.
Wait till he finishes the tight end one next season. He'll be thanking me.
Love
it. Spicy. So with that brings us to the end of the show, where we've discussed our dynasty sleepers for the 2021 season. Any final thoughts on today's show? I'll come to you first, Kev.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most exciting aspects of fantasy football when you find these hidden gems and watching them absolutely smash it. I think sleeper type picks or trading for guys, it's more relevant, or they should be targeted more in your startups and rebuilds. I think when you're in a win now mode, you're kind of not thinking about sleepers. You're just wanting to get guys that can contribute right away. But I still think in a win now mode, you can still be looking for sleepers. It's more that you go in for your rookie drafts rather than going out to acquire someone that's going to hit in a couple of years' time. So sleepers are relevant on any team. It just they might have different. They might appear in different ways depending on what league you're in and where you're at with your team.
Yeah, I think these late round sleepers are where your leagues are won really in your startup drafts. Just finding that undervalued player who can break out and gain that value during the season, that can be a huge bonus to your dynasty rosters, and what helps keep your rosters strong each year after year. So yeah, definitely, guys, you should be looking at the later part of your drafts. And not just that, it's also fun to cheer on these guys. We've all been saying how we've got big hopes for these guys, and it's always fun to find these little hidden guys that not many people are talking about, and it makes you feel good about yourself when one of them does hit. So yeah, everybody loves an underdog story, so always fun to have a few sleepers going into the season.
Yeah, just for me, I think the sort of guys that we've identified can really make a difference to your dynasty teams. If only a couple of them hit, then you're going to increase value in them, and the sort of players that you can move on for better picks or players for next season. So look for guys in situations where their opportunities or targets may go up from year to year for whatever reason. So whether it's a player that moves on. So a rookie or say a year 2 guy has to step up and handle a bigger workload. And also don't be afraid to take your shot late on. Don't worry too much about ADP, and get your guy and also back yourself. So with that, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Wildcard. Also got our Linktree site on our Twitter page where you can find all our podcasts and shows on YouTube. So please check it out and hit the subscribe button. Our next show is going to be next Tuesday, the 27th of July. We'll be discussing who will be planting our flag for the 2021 season. So that's really going to be a fun one.
I could give it a miss, this one, Michael Carter. There we go. See you in a couple of weeks, boys.
Oh dear. Predictable.
I joke.
Awful.
So thanks once again and have a good one. And we'll see you all soon.
It's all right.
Yeah.